In 3, 2, 1. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about HR outsourcing, about helping the homeless, and about the 22nd event of the Okotoks Business Association. This is the Mankey Show podcast, and I'm your host, Mark Mankey, your favorite local realtor and just all-around nice guy and podcast host. Pamela Morgan is here today. She is the president of Key Instincts and the founder of Baby It's Cold Outside. Pamela, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
I appreciate it very much. So let's start with Baby It's Cold Outside, because I thought that was for dogs that were left in the cold or something like that, and that's not it at all. Tell me a little bit about that organization. You've been doing that for 15 years. Mm-hmm. So what do you do and how do you do it?
Well, we're gaining some great traction here in the Foothills community. We help out vulnerable citizens throughout all of southern Alberta. And how do we do that? We partner directly with Drop-In Center in Calgary, Mustard Seed, and Lethbridge Shelter.
Okay.
So they're great partners for us, and within the community as well. We do essential drives, we do food drives, and we do clothing drives 365 days out of the year.
Okay, so these food drives, do you manage the food, or do you do the food drives and donate them to a food bank?
Yeah, we do the food drives, and we donate them locally to our Okotoks Food Bank, which we have great partnership with. In fact, out of probably 12 to 15 charities throughout the foothills, we all partner incredibly well together. And that's a little bit of an oversight, I think, that people don't necessarily know, is how much we really take care of each other.
Now, there's been on and off again the Veterans Food Bank. It started as something small, turned into something big with Dave Howard, then collapsed under the Legion, and now it's being rebuilt in at a new location. So it's back. And there's a talk that there's about 150, I don't think there's actual proof of this, these are estimates, 150, 160 veterans in Calgary alone that are homeless. At least these are the numbers that I've been told. Do you have any association with the Veterans Food Bank as well, or veterans in particular that are homeless?
We don't, not particularly, but we do in partnering with these shelters in Calgary.
Okay.
So we give them clothing and essentials.
In your experience, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, 15 years. The Legion is saying that there is no veteran homeless problem. Is essentially what they're saying. There's like maybe 3 or 5 is what they're saying. I personally know somebody that was homeless for a number of months. Luckily for him, it was during the summer, so it wasn't so bad. But he was. We served together. Now, in your experience, have you come across many veterans on the street? Is there a veterans homeless problem in your? Or is there any of them at all out there?
I couldn't really speak to that confidently, Mark, but I could say I think there's a little bit of an overlap or misgiving, I guess, when it comes to when we think of the U.S. They have a huge veteran homeless population.
1 in 4, I've been told.
Right. And so we don't suffer the same, but we're also not the same size. We don't have the same population as the U.S. What I have been told through executive bodies at different shelters that I've gone to is there's actually more veterans coming from other countries, so from the U.S. And from other, further countries off. Not so much within our own Canadian forces, but for sure it's still there. I think it's kind of caught up in the mix.
How has the homeless population been affected in the last 15 years in your experience? Is it higher? Is it lower?
Definitely higher. Last statistics that I've heard is about 1,500 people per night per shelter. This is just Calgary. So if you just think of the Calgary Drop-In Center and the Calgary Mustard Seed, it's 1,500 people that need a bed a night, and they're over capacity. So given the Alberta economy, we're 1 to 2 paychecks, a survey says, away from being in that situation. So unfortunately, there's
This last cold snap must have just been brutal.
Bad, right? Yeah, for sure. And we're very fortunate because right here in the foothills, our community is very aware of that. And now that we're getting a little bit more traction and there's more awareness that Baby It's Cold Outside is right here, people are contacting us directly. I've got a bag of clothes. I've got brand new boots I've never worn. So I really have to applaud right here in our community how much we take care of each other. Pardon me. I do also want to add that even though in Okotoks we would say we don't have a homeless population, we do have, or rough sleepers. Rough sleepers is somebody sleeping under a bridge and things like that,
That's homeless.
right? That's homeless. We do have those couch surfers, things
Yeah.
like that, right? You hear a lot more now about, the young guys looking for a job, sleeping in the car.
Has there been a spike in the last 2 years because of the sudden economic
For
drop?
sure. For sure there has.
Do you have I'm not going to hold you to any sort of numbers, but do you have a rough guesstimate of how much it's changed in the last, or whatever the right amount of time is? I'm curious about the last 2 years. Would you say it's like a 50% spike, 1%?
I wouldn't want to really put my name to a number or
No,
anything
no, no,
like
of
that,
course
right?
not. But just roughly.
I would say for sure it's gone up at least, I would say 15% to maybe 20%.
Okay, that's significant.
People moving back home with their parents, we don't see that. And the hidden homeless, right? So that's people, flopping on a buddy's couch and things like that, trying to get their feet underneath them again, right? So, we went from the land of luxury really here in Alberta, and everything was great. And when we bottomed out, for sure that has affected us, and it
And
will
even the
for a long
people that
time.
were diligent at saving, that doesn't last long when you're out of work.
It doesn't last long.
No.
When you have a mortgage and mouths to feed and all of those things, right?
Yeah. I got friends in the HVAC industry, and I had no idea how bad it was till last night. I was talking with a good friend of mine, a veteran guy, who has been around forever in that field, well respected, well established, really good at what he does. And he said it is so thin, he's lucky to get any jobs. And like he's doing okay himself, but he says it is so darn thin. One position that he applied for, which is a position that in a good economy nobody ever wants, there were 1,500 resumes. 1,500 for one position for a job nobody wants. Wow. Got another friend. He's a South African veteran and just a great guy. And he's a journeyman HVAC guy. For love or money, he cannot find residential or commercial work, anything. He just can't find anything. And that's the norm out there right now. So capable, working people with skills have to leave their trade and have to do something else. But Jesus, what? The jobless rate is crazy.
It really is, and I think people would be surprised to know that a lot of that homeless population that sleeps at the shelter every night works 40 hours a work week. They got up in the morning, they go to their job.
So they have full-time
They have
jobs
full-time
and they're
jobs.
homeless.
Right.
You know what? I understand that. At the end of my first marriage, I was technically homeless. I lived in a 20-foot camper trailer in our yard. We had an acreage at the time, which we lost, unfortunately. I couldn't keep it going. But there's big events, and just because it doesn't affect one person doesn't mean it doesn't affect another person. My life collapsed because I couldn't do it. I couldn't emotionally hold myself together. So I was a realtor back then, and my business collapsed because I collapsed. And you are your business. I
Right.
couldn't do it anymore. And for 3 years, I lived in a support home as a respite worker. So basically, it meant I looked after a couple of developmentally challenged adults. We're still great friends today with both those guys. But I was rent free. If I wasn't rent free, I'd be in that trailer in somebody's backyard with no option, because there's no way that I could pay the support payments that I was and survive myself. There was enough room for one in my budget, not two.
Absolutely.
So instead of choosing myself, I chose her and the kids to give all the money to. And and yet people would look at somebody like myself and say, well, you're employable and you're skilled and there's all these things that you have the ability to do. Yeah, I can't do them right now.
Right.
And then you're done. But there's, what do you have to say? So to that, what would you say about the stigma of homelessness? The idea that just work, you bum.
Right. Work, you bum, you're a junkie.
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously have some sort of addiction problem. For sure, that's out there, but it's also within our communities, right? There's a lot of mental illness out there. And when I speak to mental illness, I'm not just speaking to the severity of schizophrenia, things like that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also speaking to the guy that lost his wife from cancer and bottomed out. He lost his job, lost the home, went into a depression, and it's all fallen apart on him, right? So that's more of the story. In our charity, Baby It's Cold Outside, we speak a lot about seeing people and seeing them, not the situation that they're in, and the circumstance that they're in. That we want people to really look in the eyes of someone else and see that soul and understand they're just like anyone else. They're just falling on a tough time. And I'm a true believer, Mark, that it's a responsibility as being another fellow human being to help that person up, right?
I think part of it is when people can't relate to somebody, then it's easy to just stigmatize them or write them off. But to the idea of mental illness, I think a term change might not be a bad idea. For instance, I've been in therapy for 2 years for PTSD. I'm very open about it because it's an injury. And when people wrap their head around that, and I'm not talking about I'm not calling it an injury because it makes me feel better, because that's a scientific fact. So when you call something an injury, well, why would I be embarrassed about an injury? And the other thing about mental injuries as opposed to mental illness, not that one is better than the other or anything like that, but when you realize that there is such a thing as mental injury, whether it be PTSD or whatever, any kind of trauma-related response, nobody is insulated from mental injury. That can happen to anybody,
Absolutely.
right? Because people think, well, that could never happen. There's no history of mental illness. I don't even know a schizophrenic. So, and then they can't relate to that. But mental injury, you can't control that. That could be a car accident that you get in and you see your child die, mental injury. And, well, but I'm a strong individual. I'd get over it. You don't know that.
You don't know that.
You don't know that. You don't know what your tipping point is.
Mm-hmm.
A mental injury can cripple you for the rest of your life. And when I say cripple you, I mean a depression so bad you can't brush your teeth, literally. Like you just can't bring yourself to get out of bed.
Absolutely.
And I'm ranting instead of
No.
letting you talk. I'm taking it over.
That's okay.
But as far as the stigma, is that a part of what Baby It's Cold Outside? Do you deal with the stigma part of it and trying to remove the stigma? If so, how so?
Very much so. We're going to be doing the trade show in Okotoks this year, which is going to be great. We're going to start building some awareness there. We have fundraisers and just being out in the community all the time. Anybody who knows me and knows anybody on my board, we talk a lot about vulnerable citizens. We talk a lot about checking in on your neighbor. That's super important. You don't know what's going on next door. I grew up in a farming community between Vulcan and Netton, and it was nothing for us. Whether there was a birth or a death or anything in between, somebody got a casserole, and we were always looking out for each other, right?
Yeah.
Everybody helped each other, and we really need to get back to that. We need to get back to checking up on each other and just checking in on each other.
What about social media with that? You see somebody has a loss, so somebody puts a sad face emoji on Facebook. Well, I think a casserole would be a little more helpful. Like
Picking up the phone.
picking up the phone, or a 1 week coupon for HelloFresh. It's like, here, let's take this off your hands for a week here.
Right.
Something like that. You know, well, we've lost that with social media. Or do you see that we're losing that? Or
What's funny to me is that we have all of these different avenues of communication now, and we communicate less. We actually, we're almost becoming inept to having conversations like you and I are having today, to get to know each other, to get into each other's heads. When we're saying to someone, "Hi, how are you today?" Really ask, "Hi, how are you today?" And be sincere about that. And if you feel that that person might not be okay, just say, you don't have to poke and prod at anybody either, but say, I'm here if you want to chat, but be sincere about that, you know.
it seems that there's more division too, because it's difficult to get mad at somebody when you're face to face having a conversation, but it's very easy to get mad at somebody on Facebook. And get into an argument that you wouldn't otherwise get into if you're face to face. I had a couple of people I've been friends with for 20 years because we disagreed about a term, just a term. I think it means one thing, they think it means another, but it was emotionally charged for them, wasn't for me. But enough so that a 20-year friendship, I'm done, blocked, and not just
Wow.
unfriended, but blocked. With a big rant at the end of it. They got so upset because we have a difference of opinion on the meaning of a term. And that's all it was.
That's really disappointing, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
disappointing, but it's a bit of a filter, But that would not happen face to face.
No.
It would not happen face to face. Somebody would not get up and leave the room and say, "I'm done with you." They wouldn't do that face to face, but on Facebook, it's easy.
It's almost like sometimes I find we become a different entity when we're on Facebook, whether we become braver than what we really are, that we would be face to face, or we can make ourselves look really good on Facebook. We can make our lives look pretty spectacular, or we could make it look pretty bad, you know?
There's been studies out the depression that comes along with social media. I I will get to a point where I don't have to actually physically go on social media myself. I'm going to get a social media manager or something. I'm just going to get off there because it is depressing because of something called okay, not okay theory. So, being okay is relevant to how you see others. Like if you're homeless and you're under a bridge and it's 20 and it's the middle of the summer and you got a good blanket and you're fine. You could say, "I'm okay," because at least I'm not that guy that doesn't even have a blanket. So
Right.
comparatively, you're okay. Whereas somebody nice and warm in their house, that homeless situation wouldn't be okay. Everything's relevant based on perspective for whether or not you're feeling okay.
Absolutely. And there's, to further that, there's people who are in bad situations in their house, in a domestic abuse situation,
Hmm.
whatever the case may be, that are not okay and would take that next step to say, I want to sleep under the bridge. I'd feel safer there than I would in my own home, right?
And for a lot of people, it's the alternative to suicide. It's what are my choices? Eat a bullet or be homeless. And that is the choice, and that would be the thought process in a lot of people's heads. And so when you see somebody that's homeless sleeping on the bridge, you can look at them, "Hey, you bum," or you can look at them like, "Oh my God, a suicide survivor."
Perfect example, Mark. Perfect example. Anybody who has an opportunity to go to one of the shelters, I really promote you to do that, because the way the volunteers and the employees of these shelters treat their clients, and that's what they're called, as clients, is remarkable. There's so much dignity and respect. It's really worth, whether you want to go make a meal there, whether you want to just drop in and volunteer some time. They would love that. They would love the support. But it's a real eye opener of this misconception that the people sometimes have.
It's so counterproductive when if you have an interaction with a homeless person and you call them down or say, "Why don't you just get a job?" or whatever the case is, or in more extreme cases, somebody a cat calls them or spits at them or splashes them with the car on purpose or something to be humiliating. Talk about getting kicked when you're down. I mean, here's somebody that's already just can't do it right now. It may not be forever, but at that moment in their life, they just can't do more than what they're doing. They can't. If they could, they would, but but they can't. And so here they are at the lowest point of their life, and you're spitting on them, figuratively or literally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, it, Now, who's higher on the social ladder there? I would say the homeless person.
Absolutely.
The person spitting on you is a piece of shit. That you can't do that. But they do because they feel that they're superior in some way when it's exactly the opposite. I guess it's everybody has a story. A cop told me this once.
Everybody.
That guy was a total a-hole. Yeah, yeah, he was. But do you know his story? Have you ever been an a-hole? What's the backstory? Because the better you understand somebody, the easier it is to have some sort of empathy and compassion for them.
And that's what we need more of. You and I had a conversation recently about compassion, right? And I'm a bit of a compassion junkie, I guess. And I think you just can't get enough of that. Looking out for each other, and again, back to seeing that person, and not the circumstance they're in. Some of the nicest people I've met have been vulnerable citizens in the community, and you know, to be blunt, you want someone like me on the other side of that if you're down on your times, because you never know when you're going to trade that spot.
The number one human emotional need, regardless of where you sleep at night, the number one human emotional need is affirmation. We all need that. We all need a sense of I matter. And that's what you have the least of when you're homeless. So the greatest gift you could possibly give anybody, but especially somebody who's lacking it the most, is what you said, the sense of I see you, not your situation. In the movie Avatar, I can't wait for the next one. It's only been 20 years since the last one. Like that's a long time to wait for a sequel. But the big, most intimate thing that they do, they touch foreheads or whatever it is, and they say, "I see you."
I love that.
That's their like I see you, not your scars, not the mud on your face, not your clothes. I see you, who you are, your soul, your essence. I see that, and I appreciate and honor that. And I guess that's kind of what the word namaste is supposed to mean, something like
Yes.
that, of the same ilk. But that is the greatest gift you can give anybody. And so instead of spitting on a homeless person, how about taking time and to have a compassionate chat and say, hey, I got a spare $20. Could you use it?
Absolutely. And if you got this spare $20 and you're worried that they're going to go spend it on crack, then go pick them up a meal. Go get them coffee.
Get them a sandwich.
Get them something tangible then if you're worried about how your $20 is going to be spent.
Yeah. I think so the scammers out there, the panhandlers that are actually making a damn good income. I'm not saying that that's happening in Calgary, but there are situations where panhandlers are actually doing really well.
Sure.
So what? So give anyway. And the odd one might not need it. But I think that's exceptionally rare.
I do too. And I can't take the chance to decide who's worthy and not. That's just not my place here, in this thing called life. To me, everybody's worthy. What you do at the end of the day is up to you. I just need to know that I'm going to be compassionate.
There's a very pervasive urban myth about, and it might not be a myth, but I think it's a misperception, about the guy in the Cadillac. Oh, I used to give to the food bank, and then I went there one day. Oh, why were we there? But I went there one day, and I saw somebody in a Cadillac. I've heard this exact same story so many freaking times. And it's always a Cadillac. It's not a Lexus. It's always a Cadillac for some reason. There's something iconic about it. But it's always a story about a Cadillac. And this lady, well-dressed in a Cadillac, and she was loading up her trunk with, and so after I saw that, I never gave to the food bank again. I'm like, well, you're an idiot. Let's say that this story is completely accurate. I
Right.
know, and anybody listening to the show has probably heard the identical story, right? So let's just look at your logic here for a second. The most expensive house I ever sold when I was a realtor in Sherwood Park was $1.14 million in the Estates of Sherwood Park. We set a record for the highest price ever sold in the Estates of Sherwood Park at that time, whatever year it was, probably 2009, 2010. And so you would assume, well, I just got you the highest price ever of any house ever sold in here, so you must be rolling in it. No, they had 8 mortgages. I didn't know. I thought that was only possible on The Simpsons with more,
Right.
but they had 8. And I personally lent them $80,000, which I got back after the sale of the house. Less than what they promised, but anyway, I got squared up. These guys were so broke, they did not have a pot to piss in. They had a hell of a nice 3,800 square foot house with all kinds of bells and whistles, but they couldn't afford it. They didn't know where their food was coming from. And they were driving beaters. So if they pull up in a Lexus, or if it doesn't mean they're not broke, especially now. There are so many people that had money and now don't. There were some stories at the previous Veterans Food Bank of people showing up before they would give them the food. Well, do you got a car? Yeah, sell it. Do you have a house? Yeah, sell it. Now, if those stories are accurate, these are the stories I received. I'm not saying that they're 100% true or there's not another side to it.
Right.
Because I also talked to the other side that kind of verified that they actually are true. These are the people that are actually accused of this. But you're a douchebag
Yep.
because you don't know their story. If somebody pulls up in a flippin' Lexus, okay, feed them because you don't know. Most people are 2 weeks away from being broke, regardless of their income level. I have met people that make $1 million a year consistently that have lost it all and have literally nothing, not even food. My parents growing up had at a total of 16 hotels, motels. So that's a few
Wow.
bucks,
Yeah.
right? We lost everything. I watched everything I own get auctioned off in the driveway when I was 13 years old. Bye-bye stuff,
Right.
gone. And we lived in our uncle's basement, their basement, with our family of 4 and their family of 6, for 10 months. 10 months living in their basement, 1 bathroom for the whole house,
Wow.
1 bathroom, and so. Oh, but you got, and Dad did have a Cadillac, quite literally. Actually had 2 of them at one point. And you can't assume that means you're okay.
You just can't,
You can't.
and it's this right now in our economy is a great example of that, even yourself being a realtor,
Oh, I'm starving right now.
right? And you're even seeing it from your clients. They got to get out and they got to get out fast, and they're willing to, dump some cash in order to do that. We're presently selling my mom and dad's house as they move into assisted living, and you're gonna just take what you got to take, to make that next step. On the flip side of it too, Mark, is there's a real misconception that the rich keep getting richer, and I really want to speak to that because being somebody who is the founder of a charity, and I live a very nice life, which I've worked very hard for.
Yeah, I sure have.
There's a little bit of a misconception that the rich keep getting richer. It's actually, from my personal experience of 15 years, a lot of what would be acclaimed the rich people are the ones that are opening their wallets, that are helping the next guy. So I really have to address that. I've had someone come to me recently who said, well, the people that live, and anybody in Okotoks will relate to this, and anybody who lives in the Cimarron Estates area in Okotoks, they're untouchable. They don't do anything. And part of me wanted to say, excuse me?
What do you mean by untouchable? I don't quite follow.
Untouchable, that they're a little bit snooty, that
Okay.
right? And I said, actually, no, I know a lot of people that live in the Cimarron area, and they're like anybody else from any other area. Again, we keep like putting labels and putting ourselves in boxes, and it's just not a healthy way to work. And I don't get that a lot, but I do get that to a degree that people think people who
People that are jealous of others need to tear them down and find a way that to just say why you are a bad person. It's just a need to do. It's an ego thing. It's actually one of the things, love him or hate him, it's one of the things that Trump's up against, right? Is that because before he ran for office, he was the American dream. So, and that was touted in rap songs and everything else. Like he was the icon. And then when he starts running for office, if people are tearing him down because he's doing things and has things that they couldn't imagine. And I've seen, but that's on any level, the extreme level there, or the extreme level, as an example, when I wrote my first book and it was published. I had no idea that people would be threatened by that or jealous, because that's just not part of who I am. So when it started happening to me, it wasn't, I didn't recognize it. I just thought that was weird. Why are you attacking me because I wrote a book? I don't get it. But the idea was, well, you're now a published author. I see you as successful, which you don't make money writing books.
No, you don't.
No, they cost you money. They're a key that opens doors. But people started cutting me down. And when I got my first nice car, I had a Jaguar for a while. Oh, my God. I couldn't get, I had it for 3 months and I sold it. I'm like, I don't need this shit. Because the people that I was running with, that they saw me as surpassing them when we started at the same point. That's how they saw it. It's not how I saw it. But I started getting cut down and insulted, and my character being questioned, and all these things. Well, you must be crooked if you can afford that Jag. But the truth is, and as you know, I started the Okotoks Business Association. I found that I was just running with the wrong circles. The circles that I am most comfortable with are people like yourself, entrepreneurs, people that want to support each other. So the truth is, within the business community, at least as far as SMBs, small to medium businesses, is that they tend to be some of the kindest, most generous, giving, supportive people that I know of in society. Because instead of being jealous for others, they're like, hey, right on. They're applauding you and patting you on the back.
Absolutely.
So the reputation of business owners and the reality are two different things. One thing we're going to do, Pamela, I didn't expect it to now because we're at 32 minutes. So we're going to do segments.
Okay.
So this segment is on homelessness.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up homelessness, and then I'll stop it, and then I'll do a second segment, and I'll publish all three of them separately. And if anybody's still listening, after homelessness, we're going to talk about Key Instincts, which is Pamela's company, and what they do. And the last segment will be on Okotoks Business Association, because she's doing a presentation here on March 14th. That's our 22nd event. So back to homelessness. What are we missing? What do you want to leave the audience with?
Again, just check in on each other, and know that we're all in this thing called life together, and be compassionate, and whatever that looks like to you, and however you want to be treated. Somebody else wants to be treated the same way, so check in on your neighbors, make sure that your family members are okay, and just take that moment to really, open your heart up and know that we're in this game together.
So how can somebody help and support Baby It's Cold Outside?
You can contact us on our Facebook page, or on our website. You most certainly can always give me a call at 403-660-3648.
What's that number again, Pamela?
Sorry, 403-660-3648. And leave me a message if you want to volunteer, if you want to donate. any items. Spring is coming, believe it or not, folks. I'm a believer that the sun is going to shine, and you want to clean out your closet, and you know those gentle items could go to somebody else in need. Please, reach out to us, and we'll take care of that for you. I will note we do have a 10-year goal, and that will be transitional housing right here in the foothills. So taking somebody to that next level and offering a hand up. So we live in a great community. You've proven this time and time again, and there's no one more honored to be part of this community. So I thank everybody in Alberta and in our foothills community for offering us a hand up and helping others too.
Well, my friend, thank you for what you do and for the people that you help. This is the first segment of the Mankey Show podcast with Pamela Morgan talking about homelessness. Please tune in to our next 2 segments.